Don't let the bastards grind you down. These words, June's battle cry in Execution, perfectly encapsulate what might be the most emotionally devastating yet cathartic episode of the entire series. Set against Taylor Swift's hauntingly appropriate "Look What You Made Me Do," the penultimate episode of The Handmaid's Tale delivers exactly what its title promises: executions, both literal and figurative, as characters make their final choices and face the ultimate consequences. But what makes this episode truly remarkable isn't just who lives or dies, it's how these deaths transform from mere plot points into profound statements about sacrifice, redemption, and the true meaning of revolution. Let's dive into this landmark episode, which picks up immediately after the Handmaid's bloody rebellion at the wedding feast, where they killed the sedated commanders. As bombs explode throughout Gilead, June faces a near-death experience at her own execution before being dramatically rescued, while two major characters meet their end in a fiery explosion that will forever change the landscape of this story. The rebellion that Mayday has been planning since day one finally reaches its climactic turning point, but as June knows all too well, freedom always comes with a price. June Osborne, the warrior who never forgot how to love. In Execution, we see June at perhaps her most powerful, not just as a fighter, but as a woman who remembers the purpose behind her rage. What strikes me most about June in this episode is how she balances her revolutionary fury with a profound capacity for love and connection. The episode opens with chaos as the handmaids scatter into the night, hunted like animals following their rebellion at Serena and Wharton's wedding feast. Despite successfully killing many sedated commanders, their escape truck is intercepted midway by guardians, and they're all dragged back to Gilead. Yet amid this terror, what stands out most is the bond between June, Moira, Janine, and Ava, who we learn is actually an embedded CIA agent who once took community theater classes. Their decision to stay and finish this isn't just strategic, it's deeply personal. These women who've endured unspeakable trauma together still find the strength to say, "I love you," before June is separated from the group and brought face to face with Commander Wharton. In one of the episode's most powerful scenes, June faces execution alongside Aunt Lydia and other handmaids. Standing before the nooses and the sea of red, June transforms a moment of apparent defeat into one of triumph. Her speech, which begins as a prayer asking God for forgiveness, but turns into that iconic battle cry, "Don't let the bastards grind you down," isn't just rebellion, it's reclamation. She's taking back the power of words and faith that Gilead perverted. What makes this scene even more powerful is how June is saved at the last possible moment. As she's strung up and hanging, Luke, Rita, and other Mayday members emerge from the crowd with weapons. The moment is both harrowing and triumphant. June literally between life and death as Rita manages to cut her down and save her from choking. When she opens her eyes to see Luke and American fighter jets in the sky, we realize this isn't just a rescue. It's the beginning of a full-scale offensive against Gilead. But perhaps what defines June most in this episode is her unflinching commitment to see things through, even when faced with heartbreaking choices. When she sees Nick about to board the doomed plane, she stays silent, knowing that saving the man she once loved would come at too high a price for the revolution. It's a devastating moment that showcases June's evolution from someone fighting for personal vengeance to a leader making the hardest choices for the greater good. Commander Lawrence and Nick Blaine. The noble and tragic endings. The deaths of Commander Joseph Lawrence and Nick Blaine represent two of the most heart-wrenching yet perfectly conceived character conclusions of the series. Lawrence's journey has always been complicated. A good man who made terrible choices for what he believed were the right reasons. When June and Mark Tuello approach him with their plan to bomb the commander's plane, his reluctance is palpable. The plan seems simple enough. Arrive earlier than the other commanders, place the bomb, and get off the plane before it takes off for DC. June even offers to drive him to and from the hangar, giving him moral support for this dangerous mission. But when circumstances force him to make a split-second decision, as the commanders arrive earlier than planned, eager to leave and gather support against the rebellion, Lawrence realizes he won't be able to get out once he boards. He also knows that if he doesn't take the bomb with him, Mayday will lose its fighting chance. That deep, mournful sigh as he walks up the steps, looking back at June hiding behind the car, is devastating. It's the sound of a man who finally understands the cost of atonement. As showrunner Eric Tuchman put it, it felt like an honest ending and a noble ending for this character. Indeed, actor Bradley Whitford embraced this conclusion, relieved that Lawrence found redemption rather than descending further into evil. Then there's Nick, the man who has spent 6 seasons walking an impossible tightrope between his love for June and his position in Gilead. His appearance at the airfield is shocking, but somehow inevitable. What makes it even more tragic is that he had no plans to join the flight initially. He was at the hospital with Rose, who had a minor complication from consuming the spiked wedding cake. Once she and the baby were confirmed to be fine, Rose urged Nick to go with her father, Wharton, to fight for Gilead and do away with June once and for all. Without these fateful words, Nick might have stayed at the hospital instead of heading to his death. Nick's hesitation at the top of the staircase is brief, but telling, as if he might turn and see June one last time. June, watching from her hiding place, faces her own impossible choice. Call out, to warn the man she once loved, potentially sacrificing the entire rebellion, or stay silent and let him fly to his death. Had Nick not betrayed her before, she might have acted differently. Instead, she makes the hardest decision a leader can make, choosing the greater good over personal connection. On the plane, Nick's final conversation with Lawrence reveals the tragic weight of paths not taken. Is she all right? He asks about June, his concern for her evident even in these last moments. Lawrence confirms she's alive, and then Nick confesses, "She told me to leave all this behind." There's a universe of regret in those simple words, acknowledgement of the escape route June once offered him, the life they might have shared beyond Gilead's walls. Lawrence's response cuts deep. You should have listened to her. It's not accusation, but sad recognition, the wisdom that comes too late. As the plane takes flight, June emerges from her hiding place, drawn almost unconsciously toward its path. The camera lingers on her face, grief, resignation, and something like longing swimming in her eyes as she walks forward. It's as though some part of her, despite everything, still wants to call out, to save Nick from his fate. This silent, instinctive movement toward the man she once loved speaks volumes about the complicated bond they shared. When the explosion finally comes, transforming the night sky into a ball of fire, June doesn't flinch or turn away. She bears witness to the end of 2 men who shaped her journey through Gilead, one her ally, one her almost love. Their deaths, necessary sacrifices for the revolution she's fought so hard to bring about. The tears in her eyes reflect not just the flames, but the closing of a chapter that has defined her for so long. Her connection to Nick, with all its hope and heartbreak, finally consumed in fire. Aunt Lydia and Serena, women on the precipice of transformation. 2 of Gilead's most complex women reach pivotal turning points in execution, though in starkly different ways. Aunt Lydia's moment of reckoning arrives as she stands beside June on the execution stage, suddenly seeing clearly what she's been part of. When Commander Wharton publicly blames her for not handling the handmaids properly, something snaps within her. She lashes out at him and the entire Gilead government in a moment that shocks everyone present, including June and the other handmaids. Looking out at the nooses, the sea of red, and the righteous rage disguised as ritual, she experiences an epiphany. Her rebuke against the men in power, calling them wicked and godless, is revolutionary, coming from someone who has enforced their rules with such brutality. This admission, from a woman who has twisted scripture into a weapon of submission, lands like a thunderclap. Aunt Lydia finally speaks the truth. She's known all along, but refused to acknowledge. Gilead was never about faith. It was about powerful men using religion to justify their cruelty. This outburst doesn't just warm the hearts of the Handmaids. It marks a potential turning point for one of the show's most complicated characters. Meanwhile, Serena's journey in this episode reveals how far she still has to go. After fleeing from Wharton's home upon discovering he wanted to keep a handmaid in their marriage, she witnesses the bloody rebellion in the streets and finds temporary refuge in Lawrence's house. However, her safety is short-lived when Naomi calls Wharton, believing Serena should submit to her fate and let the men save them from the wrath of the women they all wronged. When we see Serena in custody with the Americans, her interaction with June is telling. At first, she's genuinely happy to see June alive, but when questioned about Wharton's plans, she hesitates to reveal anything. This prompts June to conclude that she has learned nothing from their experiences so far. A devastating assessment of someone who has witnessed and experienced so much of Gilead's brutality firsthand. Yet Serena does eventually break, providing crucial information about the commander's flight to D.C. In revealing the flight plan, Serena doesn't reach for power or protection. She reaches for decency, however reluctantly. It's a small step, perhaps, but a meaningful one for a character who has been villain, victim, and survivor throughout this series. The question remains whether this choice represents true growth, or merely temporary alignment with whoever seems most likely to protect her. The visual language of Revolution, the cinematography and execution, deserves special mention for its powerful visual storytelling. The episode opens with chaos, handmaids scattering in the night, bombs going off throughout the city, echoes of screaming wives, Gilead literally burning. These disorienting sequences effectively communicate the disorder that follows Revolution and sets the tone for an episode that marks the beginning of the end for the oppressive regime that Mayday has been trying to bring down since day one. But it's the execution scene that delivers the most stunning visual reversal in the series. The wall, that symbol of Gilead's oppression, where bodies have hung as warnings throughout 6 seasons, becomes the stage for the Handmaid's triumph. The sea of red, the nooses, the commanders forced to their knees, these images invert the power dynamics that have defined this world. Most striking is the moment when June is actually hanging, struggling for air, before Rita manages to cut her down. This visceral portrayal of June's near-death experience makes her survival and the subsequent arrival of American fighter jets overhead all the more powerful. The episode's final visual sequence is masterfully executed. June hiding behind the car, watching helplessly as Nick boards the plane, the aircraft taking off, and then the explosion that transforms the sky into a ball of fire. The reflection of this fiery death in June's tearful eyes as she silently says goodbye to the man she once loved is breathtaking in its simplicity and significance. Like fireworks celebrating independence, this fiery end represents both destruction and possibility, the necessary sacrifice that might finally bring Gilead to its knees. Another powerful visual moment comes when the handmaids, once freed from their nooses, pick up weapons and join the fight. These women, clothed in the red garments that marked them as property, now wielding the tools of their oppressors' destruction, create a striking image of revolution and reclamation. Their transformation from victims to warriors completes the visual story arc that has been building across 6 seasons. Personal reaction. The reckoning. We've waited for. I have to say, this episode wrecked me in the best possible way. After 6 seasons of watching these characters suffer under Gilead's boot, execution delivered the catharsis we've been craving without simplifying the complex moral questions at the heart of the story. What moved me most was how the episode reframed the entire series not as a story about trauma, but about transformation. The handmaids didn't just survive, they rose together in love, in fury, and in sacred vengeance. That balance between righteous rage and profound connection feels revolutionary in itself. The deaths of Lawrence and Nick hit hard, precisely because they were earned. These weren't shock value deaths, but meaningful conclusions to character arcs that have been building for years. Lawrence found the redemption he sought, while Nick finally made the choice he'd been avoiding. There's tragedy in both endings, but also a sense of completion, final assessment, and future predictions. Execution stands as not just a great episode of The Handmaid's Tale, but as one of the finest hours of television this year. It delivered explosions and emotional gut punches in equal measure while advancing the story toward what promises to be an unforgettable finale. The episode's perfect balance of action, emotion, and character development showcases why this series has remained so compelling throughout its 6-season run. Looking ahead to the series finale, I expect we'll see the immediate aftermath of the Commander's deaths and the power vacuum it creates in Gilead. With Wharton and the remaining high-ranking commanders gone, Gilead's leadership structure has effectively been decapitated. This creates the perfect opportunity for the American government to press their advantage, especially with Mayday's assistance from within. June will likely play a crucial role in establishing whatever comes next, though I doubt we'll see a neat and tidy victory. This show has never been about easy answers, and I suspect the finale will continue to explore the complicated reality of rebuilding after revolution. There's also the question of what happens to the wives and remaining loyal Gilead citizens. Will there be trials, forgiveness, another cycle of violence? I'm particularly interested in what becomes of Serena and her son, as well as Aunt Lydia, whose moment of clarity suggests she might finally choose a different path. Lydia's outburst against Gilead's leaders could position her as a powerful voice in whatever transitional government emerges, someone who knows the system intimately, but has now publicly rejected it. And of course, there's the question of Hannah, Agnes, whose story remains unresolved. Will June finally be reunited with her daughter? And if so, how will Hannah, raised in Gilead for years, adjust to freedom and a mother she barely remembers? What do you think will happen in the series finale? Was June right to remain silent when she saw Nick boarding the plane? Or should she have tried to save him despite the cost to the rebellion? Do you believe there can truly be healing after Gilead, or will its scars remain forever? And what justice, if any, should be served to those who enabled and enforced Gilead's brutal regime?